Okay, so hi everyone. Thank y'all for joining us on this evening. My name is Lindy, and Hib is also on this call. She's our program coordinator. I'm the program manager for Just for Success. And if we haven't, I think I recognize most of these names. So thank you for joining us this evening for such a special event. We're so excited to welcome Lyric Wardlow to join us for this virtual hour of learning more about or learning about her presentation, The Untangled, A Discovery into Black Hair. Thank you, Lyric, for taking the time to talk with us. This will be my second time to hear this presentation, and I just loved it, and I'm excited to learn more. So we really value your time and your knowledge. And so what we're going to do today is just, Lyric is going to take over, and she has a presentation prepared, and we'll have a chat box. So if you have any questions throughout the presentation, feel free to put questions in the chat. But there is time at the end for questions and answers. So thanks again for being here.
Awesome, thanks so much. So I am Lyric Wardlow. I am a Hoosier originally from South Bend, Indiana, but I moved to Texas about 10 years ago. And I felt like this presentation would be really important because I am a Black woman. And in the social work that I do in my community, I had a lot of comments and questions about my hair changing and things that sometimes would make me uncomfortable. And one of the old nonprofits that I used to work with, a lot of white women specifically would ask questions and have comments about how I would look. And especially during COVID times, it was kind of uncomfortable to address each person individually. And so for Black History Month a couple years ago, they, had said some comments, and I was like, you know what, how about I build a presentation and I teach y'all about Black hair, and maybe y'all could learn something and we could share this experience as a community, instead of it being, I knew this because of my background in a neighborhood, and that's how I learned about Black hair, but maybe what they learned was not the best view of Black hair. And so I built this presentation to help people kind of bridge that gap of like, what could I learn more about, and what is the history of Black hair, and how does my view of Black hair also affect the Black community? So just kind of teaching about like how we can change the language and understand better and understand the history, because it's important. Just like anything else, I think hair is a very different topic in general that people don't really talk about as much. But if you don't feel good about your hair, and if you wake up looking in the mirror and saying, I don't like what I'm seeing, it can impact how you work, how you talk, how you, have interactions with people. So this topic is really important to me, but also I think to other people who have hair in general. So I'm excited to be here with all of you today. Just something that I want to acknowledge during this is that there is unknown. I'm 24 and I don't have all the answers to the Black community. I am not the token Black girl for my history, but I think that during this, I want to acknowledge that there are unknowns on both ends, and that's okay. Some answers can't be answered by me, but I want to be able to teach as much as I can about what I do know and what my experience was and how I can help bridge that gap. And then embracing vulnerability. It's okay to not know. It's okay to have experiences that are different from other people's. And my hope is that we don't yuck someone's yum in this space, that we do not put negative views into the spaces, but we're coming with this from a place that we want to learn and embrace the unknown and the being vulnerable. So just something that I wanted to call out. So as we talk about this topic today, I think it's really important to just say that everyone has their own identity, and that when we're talking about Black hair specifically, it is a very loaded and hard conversation. And some of the things that we're going to talk about today do include things like slavery, which can be kind of triggering to some people. But I want to start defining why hair is so important, not just for myself as a Black woman, but for all communities. It is a way that people can define themselves and their personality and their interests. And if people in public can't feel comfortable with how they look, how can they move forward in a positive way and feel empowered. I want all communities, especially the Black hair community, to feel like they are powerful with the hair that they have on their heads. And growing up, I sometimes didn't feel that way about my own hair, which was part of the reason why I felt like this topic is so important to talk about. And so just to kind of briefly show who I am. So I am an activist in this community with people experiencing homelessness. I'm an upcoming author. I have a book coming out about my story. I'm a public speaker, and then I'm a dog mom of 2 German Shepherds. So lots of hats, and I really enjoy all the work that I do, but specifically the lived experience that I have really kind of helps me in the nonprofit work that I do, and my expertise kind of helps me guide the work in the field that I'm in, and it helps me understand communities a lot better. So that's just a little bit about me. And then for today's agenda, we're going to do like a little trivia since it's Black History Month. You don't have to know all the answers. That's the point, is for us to learn together. We're going to go over some hair history. Please feel free to step out if something is a little too triggering for you. I'm not going to go in depth into slavery or anything like that, but I just understand that sometimes topics are too deep, and if your cup is already full, I don't want to overflow you with things. So please just make sure to give yourself grace. We're going to cover some adultification, what colorism is in the community, and then modern day, how hair shows up for Black communities, and then just best practices and understanding like wording and tips and tricks on how to help the Black community in their hair. So that's just what we're going to go over today. Any questions, comments? Okay. So we're going to start with our trivia. The first question is, what is the best fabric to help protect Black hair? And you can feel free to call it out, unmute, or you can also just put it in the chat, either or.
Satin.
Got it right. Yep, that's it. Satin or silk. Thanks, Lindy. Yeah. So satin or silk, this is something that I had to learn in the past 4 years, was that was going to be a lot more helpful for my hair if I didn't wear a scarf at night. So I ended up getting a satin pillowcase, and I have satin sheets now, just so that if I ever forget to wrap my hair up at night, I still have that extra layer of protection for my hair. And it's also good for Caucasian hair as well. It just keeps it soft and silky. So yeah, thank you for that. Next question. Who invented the hot comb?
I'm guessing the Victorians.
Any other guesses?
I don't know. I was thinking maybe, but I don't think so. But I was thinking maybe Madam C.J. Walker.
Oh yeah. That's right.
Okay, so just to get through time and not take too long, the answer to who invented the hot comb was Walter Salmons. Little bit before Madam C.J. Walker, but Walter Salmons was the original person to patent the hot comb. His idea was to get rid of the kinks or nappiness from Black hair, and it was originally made to heat the hair and take away any kind of texture for smoother hair. It was not an electronic item at that time. You would place it on a fire, on a stove, for it to be heated. And I to this day can't stand hot combs, because I grew up on hot combs that went on the stove and would, you know, my ears, my grandma did not notice my ears when she would use that. So I got a lot of burns. Yeah. But last question, and this has to do with Black History Month. True or false? Black History Month was originally only 1 week.
Probably true.
Any other guesses? So this one is actually true. Carter G. Woodson was the father of Black History Month, but originally he promoted as a Black Negro History Week. And then 50 years afterwards, Gerald R. Ford was the one to officially recognize it and made it into a month in February. It's right between Mr. Woodson's birthday and then also I think someone else's birthday back in the past. I don't have the exact name, but it was between two birthdays that he thought it would be a really good month of the year to have Black History Week. So just a cool little fact that I thought I should pull out. So we're about to get into the history of Black hair, but really briefly, I want to show a video that kind of gets the idea of why this is so important. I kind of talked about it in the beginning, but I think this video really encapsulates why we are here today talking about Black hair. So really quickly, I'm going to turn off my audio so I can play the video. And then if I can just get a thumbs up from someone as soon as I press play to make sure that the audio is playing.
Why is it your grocery order arrives the second you remember everything you forgot to order? Like, without fail.
Who drank all the milk?
Fresh groceries and more. Unlimited free delivery, Walmart Plus.
What does our world tell us about hair? From fairy tales to advertisements, movies, and music videos, our icons are typically lusciously locked. Long, flowing hair has been a powerful marker of being a woman. But that's not how Afro-textured hair grows. Our hair generally grows upward and is tightly coiled, like this and like this. So what does our world tell us about Afro hair?
Black students at the prestigious Pretoria High School for Girls protested a clause that banned wide cornrows, braids, and dreadlocks.
There's an online petition demanding that Beyonce and Jay-Z do something about their daughter Blue Ivy's hair. One commentator said, quote, "No child whose mom spends thousands on her hair monthly should live life looking like a sheep."
Right now, school administrators say the girl's hair is a problem and it needs to be straightened or she'll get kicked out. But her mom doesn't understand how her hair looking like this is wrong.
Mystic Valley Regional Charter School says the two sophomore students' hair extensions violates its dress code. So they're being disciplined with detention and are prohibited from taking part in extracurricular activities.
Mainstream beauty doesn't have Black women in mind. Instead, Black women with Afro hair are expected to conform to an aesthetic that values straight hair. That desire for straight hair is a construct that started during colonization.
Okay, so I think she does really well at showing just how powerful hair can be. Girls and schools are being affected by rules and policies that basically tell them that the way their hair grows and the way that they are maintaining their hair is not okay, and that it shouldn't be allowed in schools. And so things like that really kind of hinder a Black girl from feeling like how they are naturally or how they present themselves is okay. And so as a Black girl, I've experienced this myself, and we'll talk a little bit more about that now or further into this presentation. But I think it's really important to just show that this is not just a one-person issue. This is a part of a deeper community of people who are being affected, not just by how someone views a Black girl or someone with Black hair, but has rules and regulations against how Black hair can be worn and portrayed in schools and also on TV. So Black hair history. So as we're talking about this topic, it's important to kind of notice where this comes from. Black hair originally was a specific hairstyles like braids were worn in the early 17th century before slavery started. And the earliest expressions of Black hair were through cornrows, which are braids that are tightly coiled against the scalp. Sometimes people confuse regular braids and cornrows, but cornrows are the ones that are the tightest to the head. And cornrows could symbolize in Africa, it could symbolize status, it could symbolize wealth, rank, families, all kinds of different socioeconomic spheres in Africa. So it's just really important to notice that there is a history behind our hair, and that we had something before we were brought into America. And so as these cornrows, something that I thought were really cool about our history as African Americans or Africans originally was that as they symbolize not only status and wealth, they also symbolize a map to freedom at some point, and also a way to get through our colonization into America. And so some slaves were able to use their braids as a map. There are even articles about the fact that food was hidden in braids to ensure that slaves, when they were on slave ships, could eat. Like things like corn were put into the hair to get through colonization. So I just think that's something that's really cool, is that we had this power throughout time and throughout history to be able to use our hairs as a form of resilience, which I think is just absolutely amazing. And so into the 1600s, from Africa into North America, Europeans, as they started kind of forcing people from our homes and from Africa, the resemblance of our history was seen as less than, and nappy and kinky, all of these different things. And so while we used kind of our freedom with our hair as much as we could, Europeans started to see our hair as a problem. And in this time, it became kind of a hair hate. And so by the time we got into the 1800s, it was a rule to ensure that Black women were not tempting white men. We were banned from having our hair out at certain points. And so on the right-hand side, you'll see these like beautiful hair hats. There was that negative hair hate of seeing Black hair as that kinky and wool texture, and also could be seen as more attractive by male men. And so we had to then cover our heads to ensure that we were not bothering the white folk, as I like to say it. So Black people in the 1800s had to cover their heads to maintain their own safety, and were deemed inferior by their hair texture as well. And so this is a tian. It's a headdress used to conceal the hair. As time went on, it was kind of made into its own kind of hat. But there was a rule that was enacted specifically in Texas and Louisiana to regulate these styles of dresses and hats, to make sure that we were subduing our hair and making sure that it was not out and visible to white communities. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there, is that this was an official rule. It wasn't just something that was happening in certain places and all that kind of stuff. So this is something that I do with my friends sometimes, is talking about Aunt Jemima. I don't know if anybody has ever heard of that before, but Aunt Jemima was on the pancake bottle for a long time, but most people don't know the history of where that came from. Aunt Jemima was a large Black woman who always had a smile on her face and was portrayed as the happy to be here, upbeat attitude woman. She took care of the kids. She played songs. She was on magazines and newspapers as the happy to be Black person. And so Aunt Jemima was in songs, it was in plays, and oftentimes the Black mammy, as they portrayed her, was the one that was faithful to being in service and also taking care of their mistresses, children, their families for generations and generations. Aunt Jemima was a very big part of our history as Black women specifically. And until 2001, I think it was, Aunt Jemima was on the pancake syrup bottle. And then after some history was pulled up and some suing was in place, they took Aunt Jemima off that and acknowledged the fact that the history of that bottle was pretty terrible. So just wanting to call that out as also a negative piece of history where Black women were portrayed in a certain way to help white people feel better about that relationship. But as time went on, there were these powerful figures that started to come into our history, specifically Madam C.J. Walker, who was one of the first Black millionaires in America. And she developed her own hair care line as an African-American woman for African-American hair textures. She revolutionized the press and curl style, which was basically where you would straighten and then curl the ends. And that was a kind of requirement to be able to get work at that point. Once the press and curl style became a thing, if you didn't have a certain style, if you didn't have straight hair, it was harder for you to be employed and maintain work due to certain hairstyles. And Madam C.J. Walker even has her own kind of biography on Hulu, which is really cool if you ever want to watch. It just kind of shows how she made her business. It's not accurate to the timeline of how everything happened, but it's really cool to watch how she grew as a businesswoman and in that time period as well. So just calling that out. But like I was saying, the straighter your hair, the more popular or the more easier it was to access certain things. And things like the revolution, the civil rights in the 1970s was a really, really big movement and shift from that idea of straight hair being better or seen as more than. And so Angela Davis, who's on the left, was an amazing figure of the Afro. Naturally textured hair was not something that was easily accepted. And a lot of jobs were not accepting people if they wore the fro as because they saw it as an act of rebellion, a symbol of liberation, and a symbol of pride. But Angela Davis emphasized the importance of curliness and how our manes of hair should grow the way we want them to, and we shouldn't force or conceal them because Black is beautiful no matter what. And I just absolutely love that movement. So as we're getting into the 1980s, 1990s, there's this really cool video that my mom told me about a long time ago about salt and pepper. And this video basically shows Salt and Pepper basically how they had some hair troubles in the 1990s. And no one really knows or talks about it, but the hairstyles that this group of women had didn't come from just a planning team and them, well, you should have your hair this way because it's going to make this community love it or whatever it was. It was actually on accident. And so I just think that the reason why it was on accident is really cool to learn about. So I'm going to play this video super quickly.
One of my favorite, it ended up being it's the craziest story, but it's the best story. My asymmetrical hairstyle when I shaved off the side.
Let's do
still doing it. But they still doing it. But the fun time is that my sister just got her little beautician license and permed my hair and burnt it all and messed it up. And I had to shave that side. And I looked at it so like, oh, what am I gonna do? What am I gonna do? We just shaved it and kept this side and shaved that side. Because I was bald. Like, it was wrong. Yeah. It was wrong. And then I penciled it in with eyeliner. I was penciling it in with eyeliner to cover up the bald spot. Yeah.
So we would like to apologize to all the females that did that and followed us and lost their hair back in the late 80s. Sorry. Sorry, guys.
Y'all had women going to the barbershop talking about taking off like pepper hair.
And bleaching. Oh, that bleach. Woo, we know about that blonde.
I followed her with the bleach and all my hair fell out. That was it for me. Yes.
That's crazy.
So basically, Salt and Pepper, when she got her hair done, she put a relaxer in her hair. And if you don't know much about relaxers, relaxers are a very harsh chemical that is put into black hair and made to straighten it for a long period of time. So usually if you put a relaxer in your hair, you leave it in, it's this white creamy substance. It smells like it burns your nose and it will also burn your scalp. You leave it in for however long you can. Sometimes I've seen memes or pictures of people who laugh about, the longer it's in and the more it burns, the better it's working. That was how it worked back in the day. And so when you're sitting in the chair and you get your relaxer in, I had my first relaxer when I was probably around 10 years old. I think I might have been younger. But they literally have you sit in this chair and you shake and you cry and you do whatever you have to do, but you keep that relaxer in your head and you let it burn you until you can't take the burn anymore. And I, to this day, always get really weary of anyone who mentions that they use relaxers because they can be so dangerous and so bad for your hair. And also there are lawsuits that are coming out now currently saying that that relaxers have led to cancer in the Black community. So it's just really important to kind of acknowledge that the things that we've used to try to conform to European standards have then affected us in a really, really bad way. And Salt and Pepper, she burned her hair off from using this chemical to try to fit in or try to conform to having that attractive straight hair look, which is just so unfortunate because her hair should be beautiful no matter what state it's in. And she had to cut half of her hair off because of her actions. And so let me see if I can get back to my presentation. So this is me. That kind of hits close to home. Oh, I left the little image. Let me know when it starts burning. That was what I grew up with. But my hair used to be down my back as a child. It was really, really long, but unfortunately my mom did not understand hair maintenance. Her mother never taught her, so she didn't get to teach me. So by the time that I hit my early teenage years, which are on the left-hand side, you'll see that my hair, that was around age 15, my hair from relaxing it and straightening it had gotten to my ears. And it was so bad because I didn't understand why my hair was so short, but I continued to just burn it off with straighteners. And I grew up in Indiana, so a lot of the people that I was around and were friends with were not people of color. They were other Caucasian girls. So their process in the morning was to straighten their hair. And I thought, oh, I should do the same thing, not understanding that what I was doing was damaging my hair and in a way that was really, really hard to get back to a normal state. And so by the time that I moved to Texas, my hair was so short that I couldn't even pretty much leave it out any longer. I was so insecure about it. I felt I would even skip school at times because my hair was so short and so bad that I didn't know how to do my hair, and I would resort to scarves after school, even though scarves were not allowed in school. I'd wear my hair short and wear it out in school, and then as soon as I got out, I'd put a hat on or a hair scarf so that I didn't have to feel the shame of knowing that my hair was so short. And in school, a lot of kids have this kind of misconception about Black girls can't grow their hair. because we're not taught how to maintain that, and also because supplies aren't given to low-income girls that are for our hair. So when I was in high school, I did not understand that the hair supplies that I was using weren't meant for me either. And so I wasn't putting oil in, I wasn't moisturizing, I wasn't putting in leave-in conditioner. I definitely didn't have a silk or satin scarf or bed sheets. So I missed out on how to maintain those things as a kid. And it really affected my school life, my personal life, my confidence, all kinds of things. And in the school also, not just the kids who, viewed Black girls with short hair or kinky hair or nappy hair, whatever you want to call it, which I hate to call nappy hair for Black girls anything like that ever again, because it's not nappy, it's just tightly coiled in my opinion. But even the teachers kind of viewed Black girls of color with kinkier hair, as they like to call it, as less than. And it was really difficult for Black girls to thrive in school because of if they didn't have the time or the parents to be able to teach them how to maintain and do a good hairstyle. It really affected the kids in school. And it wasn't just me, it was a lot of other girls that I saw really being targeted for how they looked and how they were seen. So just calling that out as well. So as we talk about Black girls in school, there's this book called The Push Out that I really highly recommend if you want to learn anything about the impact of how girls are perceived, but specifically on adultification. So adultification is when a child is viewed as less than for the color of their skin and needing less. So needing less nurturing, less protection, less support and comfort. They're viewed as more independent or mature, and they know more topics that maybe a typical kid should not. So in comparison to a white girl, this Black girl might be seen as more sexually active, even though they have no history, they don't know anything about this girl beforehand. Just because of their skin color, they can be seen as not needing as much in a lot of different areas. So the push out really kind of calls out the data behind that. Black girls are 4 times more likely to be suspended from schools than any other of their counterparts, which just highlights the importance of the fact that there's a deeper issue there on how Black girls are being perceived. And I think the push out really calls out those data points. And there's a lot of work being done to ensure that that's not happening any longer, and that girls aren't being criminalized and suspended and demonized for just the color of their skin and being more mature. So any questions, thoughts, reactions so far?
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, of course. Oh, Marnie, I appreciate the mad face. Yeah. Yeah, it's a difficult topic to broach or hear, is when you know that girls starting at 5 could be seen differently just for being who they are and the color of their skin. But it's really important to start to call it out and notice when things like this might be happening. And most people don't even realize that they're doing that. In schools, I'm sure teachers will admit, oh, I didn't know that, but I don't think I'm doing that. And a lot of this stuff is subconscious. A lot of the times when I was called out in class, it was for talking too much. And I never understood why I was getting called out for talking too much. All the other kids were talking, but I was the one that was called out in the class. Or for clothing. I oftentimes was kicked out of school for the clothing that I had on. But the clothing that I had was all of the clothing that the other girls could wear. but I was seen as more sexual, as more provocative, as more adult-like. And so the clothing that I wore was just seen as, you're doing a little too much, even though it was the same things that every other girl that I saw with maybe a little less body had on. My body was targeted. And that happens a lot in schools. So we're going to change topics really quickly. We're going to go from adultification into hair types. But this is just so that we can all learn together that all hair textures are different. And it's important to know and understand hair textures. And so back in the day, a lot of hair textures for Black girls were just kinky and nappy. And there were no 4A, 4B, 4C. There was no differentiation between curl types. That was not a word that I heard ever when I was in high school or middle school, was what's your curl type? It was, oh, you just got nappy hair. Oh, your hair is so thick, you know, like you can break combs in your hair, but never kind of like, how do we manage that thick hair? How do we stop making negative definitions of my curl pattern? And instead, how do we make it into, oh, your hair pattern is this, and that means that you need to change the way that you're doing your parting, or that the way you do your wash routine. That is the way that we start to change and shift this culture of negatively viewing Black hair. So on this chart, I'm sure that you can find or closely kind of get similar to your hair texture. And for me, particularly, my hair texture depends on the products that I use. And sometimes it'll kind of negatively affect me, where I'll use a hair product and it'll turn into a 4C, where my hair coils get really, really tight and really hard to comb. And then other hair supplies that I'll use that are more silky based will turn my hair curl into a 3C. And so my hair is more, my hair curl is less together and more further apart and more easily manageable. But it really just depends on your hair texture and where you are on this chart. A really good tip for people to learn about your hair porosity and your curl texture is by getting a glass of water, taking a couple of strands of your hair and dropping it into the glass. Your hair porosity would depend on how far down your hair would go into that glass of water. And there you can do research and search glass of water hair type, and it'll show you a tutorial on how you figure out where your hair porosity is and your hair texture is, depending on and where it falls in that cup. But it's a really cool kind of like helpful way of learning about your hair needs, so that if you go to a hairstylist or you start to do more hair care at home, you can know to avoid certain supplies or certain hairstylists that do certain textures over others. Really just a helpful tip that I learned a couple of years ago. So the video that I first showed in the beginning about Black women and how we're portrayed on the media also has to do not just about hair, but colorism as well. And so colorism is not only in America, it is globally, but it extends throughout all cultures, Indian cultures, Asian cultures, Black cultures, white cultures. But it's this concept that the more light you are, the more attractive you are deemed. So the lighter the skin tone, the better. Especially in Africa, skin bleaching is a very popular concept there. There are even celebrities like Nicki Minaj who came out with their own skin bleaching line to promote Black women into bleaching their skin to be more attractive. In Hollywood, most of the time, darker skinned women are not promoted, are not booked, are not put in movies because they naturally just are more dark. And we've learned to see lighter skinned people as more attractive. And that's something that I had to grow up with as well, was understanding that my skin tone was deemed more attractive to the Black community. There were men who would specifically say, oh, you're a light skin, you're pretty, but like that dark skin girl, oh no, I would never. I don't like dark skin girls. And it's just ingrained mindset that this lighter complexion, the more Caucasian you can look, the straighter your hair, the lighter you can be, the more attractive you are, the more positive qualities that you own. And it's something that we need to start to identify in all of the things that we do. And so now when I watch movies like The Little Mermaid, the new Mermaid movie that's coming out, that is a darker complected woman. That is a Black woman who originally probably would have 10 years from now never gotten a part like that. But because of all this work being done to stop this colorism and lack of Black people in Hollywood and Black dark-skinned women in Hollywood, a movement is happening and it's shifting, which is really nice to see. But colorism is really important to know about in all spaces. And then these are just some photos that I found of different skin tones that I really just want to call out. A lot of people have done articles and surveys on Black complexions. And so they will go across the world, survey people and ask, well, what features about Black women do you deem most attractive? And skin was on the least. Most people found that the skin tone was important, but that they found it the least attractive part about a Black woman. And the darker it was, the less attractive they were, which is just really unfortunate. And if you haven't seen Blackish, I highly recommend it. It's a show that came on to ABC, I think about 3 years ago now, and has some really, really dope actors. But there's a specific episode that this family has where the daughter doesn't match the skin tone of the family. She's darker and she wants to talk about that, but it seems as though no one in her family wants to. They just wanted to make it seem as though everything was fine. She wasn't different, but at the end of the day, she was. And she wanted to ensure that like that was called out, was that she didn't fit in. There's a scene in this episode where she goes into a makeup store and she puts on this lipstick, or she goes to try on this lipstick, and the makeup stylist in the store was like, oh no, honey, you're too dark for that lipstick. And immediately she is, you know, upset and is like, why is someone telling me what I can and cannot do with my own body? And why is my skin tone dictating my actions when I should be able to walk into any place, any store, and not be seen by my skin tone, but by the beauty that I have in general? And it's just a really important lens change of just not viewing the skin tone, but the person as an individual as well. So. Has anyone heard of cultural appropriation?
Yes.
Seen some nods. So cultural appropriation was pretty new to me in the past years, but in high school, around my senior year, Kylie Jenner became a really popular figure on Instagram and media, on TV, because of the Kardashian family. And Kylie Jenner specifically was someone that I didn't really look up to, but I knew of, and I'd seen her on TV and how they portrayed themselves. And Kylie Jenner had put on this wig, which is on the right-hand side. She has this red hair. And everybody at school was like, oh my God, Kylie Jenner looks so good in this wig, blah, blah, blah. And I remember looking at the photo and thinking, yeah, but like, why does she need to wear that? And like, why does it look like my hair texture? And everybody was like, oh, it's not that big of a deal. Like if she rocks it, she can wear it. And my confusion was like, but like, she doesn't need to do that. And those cornrows have history, and that's my history. And I don't think that Kylie Jenner understands that. But at the time, no one else wanted to talk about that. It was a lot of shade of like, you know, Lyric, whatever, like you're just doing too much. You're being picky about, you know, who can wear what. And at the end of the day, there was this conversation that needs to be had about, can Caucasian people wear boxer braids or cornrows or dreads? Is that allowed? Is that appropriate in our current day and age in the 21st century? In my opinion, my answer is probably not. I don't think it's appropriate most of the time. If you're of Caucasian background, you have no need to truly have braids in your hair. For myself, it's a need. I have to wear my hair in braids sometimes. It is something that protects my hair. It is something that comes from my history. And I want to acknowledge that that's an important part of where I come from. For Kylie Jenner, she gets to put on that braid and have it in for 4 hours, go to her event, and then take it down. And she never has to feel what it's like to have that in for a month and a half, to feel the weight of my braids. I don't wear it for a look. I wear it for use, for my history. And that can differ from certain communities and certain individuals. Some people will say cultural appropriation is cool, that's fine. And other people will say, no, absolutely not. But it's something that we should talk about more and start to have open conversations about what's appropriate, what is the history behind it, and like how do we make sure that people aren't taking advantage of things that come from someone's past and history. So yeah. So the hair and beauty industry is about a multi-billion-dollar industry. And on an average lifetime for specifically a Black woman, they can spend from $50,000 to $100,000 on their hair in a lifetime. But as an at-home average for a Black woman, it can be from $150 and up for our own hair, a comb, shampoos, conditioners, leave-ins, oils, all of those different things. And then for professional styles, I put $200 to $500. Sometimes Black women, when it comes to their hair, they spend thousands, and not just on, you know, going to a hair salon and getting a style done, but the hair itself. A weave, a good weave, a sew-in, bundles, all that kind of stuff. I've seen people pay $2,000 for a wig. And that doesn't cost the installation, which could be another $500 to $700 to $1,000 if you want a really good weave. So Black women spend a lot to take care of their hair. And most hair products for Black women, the average conditioner for anyone, for Caucasian people, can be around $10 a bottle for just like the regular Target shampoo conditioner. For a Black hair conditioner, shampoo, oils, it's usually double that for the really good, actually quality hair supplies. So we're spending a lot of money just to maintain our hair from home. And I personally have taught myself, because at 24, I cannot afford to go into a salon and spend up to $500 on one hairstyle. I have right now crochet hair, which I'll talk a little bit about in a second. But crochet hair is one of the most affordable things that I can do that will keep my hair in a protected style, but also not break my bank account. This took me 17 hours, and I have to sit and do this for multiple days. So walking my dogs, eating lunch, getting on a work call, all of these different things, I'm having to figure out how I'm going to make sure that my hair is away and still looks okay to be able to form as an adult. And obviously, I'm figuring it out, but it took me a long, long time to teach myself how to do my own hair, and a lot of like patience, which some people just don't have. My mom, I'm trying to teach her to do her own hair at 56. And she's like, Lyric, I don't know if I'll ever be able to get to where you are, which is fine. But without the help, she probably wouldn't even be able to do simple styles at all. She still wears a scarf whenever she can because she just doesn't have the talent or the patience to be able to navigate her own head. So it can be really intimidating to start. And at 18, after all the stuff of me relaxing and burning off my hair, I was like, I have to do something. I have to figure this out for myself. But it was really, really difficult. So the contrast between Caucasian hair and white hair or Black hair can be really, really different. And that time spent and the maintenance and all of those different things are very, very different. And it can impact our day-to-day lives and how we feel about ourselves and how we go to work, all of those kinds of things. And I mentioned my crochet hair, but I have in what I would like to call a protective style. And a protective style is basically something that keeps my natural hair away. So it's not in the sun, it can't dry out very easily. It's a way to keep my hair healthy. And I always recommend for anyone who, you know, has a Black friend who's saying, you know, I don't know what to do with my hair, I'm struggling with this. Protective styles are the way to go for Black hair to keep it healthy and maintained. Things like sew-ins can also technically be a protective style, but sew-ins can also be natural. There's like, you can have your natural hair out, so it's called like a half sew-in or a partial sew-in. So like my front of my hair will be out and the rest will be in the back braided up with like extensions in. So sometimes sew-ins can also not be the best for Black hair. Just depends on how you take care of it. Wigs are technically a protective style as long as you're taking care of it and keeping your hair maintained underneath. And then the other style is all natural, which is really, really hard to do, especially in Texas heat. Black women that I see with natural hair out in Texas, I'm like, God bless you. Like, I absolutely, that is a hard thing to do, especially when it's 102 degrees outside and the heat's just blasting. Trying to keep our hair moisturized and oiled up in this heat can be really, really hard to do. And I admire all women and all men who are able to keep their hair out year round without any issues, because I have not learned that skill yet. And so I have a little brief video that kind of shows these different Black women doing their hairs. And so on the left-hand side is a crochet hairstyle, which I have in my head right now. And it's like this hair bundle that has this crochet hook. That's literally what it is. And you take the crochet hook, you braid your hair, you take that hair strand, and then you hook it into your hair braid. And you literally do that throughout your entire head, and it creates this kind of natural looking hairstyle. It's really hard to explain if you haven't done it before, but it's a really easy way to kind of get everything away into a protective hairstyle, and you don't have to really play with it at all. The one next to that on the right is a sew-in / wig, so what we would call a lace frontal. That lace is laid, that's what some Black girls say sometimes, but it's literally like mesh lace that you glue onto your forehead. All of your hair underneath is braided, and you can wear that for weeks at a time. You can take it off at night if you really want to, but sew-ins like this are really popular for not just, or wigs like this are popular for not just Black girls, but just celebrities in general. A lot of people, Doja Cat, Nicki Minaj, Kylie Jenner, Kim Kardashian, almost every celebrity that you see doing these really, really glam looks at, you know, galas and events and stuff like that are wearing things like sew-ins and lace frontals that get glued down to portray this really straight textured hair. Relaxers are the one to the right of that. So she goes from a really kinky, or not kinky texture, but a really coily texture to a straighter look, which is perfectly fine for her. Relaxers are my personal trauma, so I will never recommend that for anyone. And then on the right hand side is that natural hair look, and that can really depend on your length, your texture, all of those different things. So it's different for all Black girls. Just to keep up with time, I just want to briefly talk about bad language and some misconceptions. Kinky Black hair doesn't grow, or it grows slowly. It's not that way at all. Our hair grows the same amount as everyone else. It's just that if it's not maintained and it's not taken care of well, that it can feel like it's growing more slowly. The breakage can happen at the ends, and then that would cause the lack of length. Black hair is stronger than other hair types. That's a really bad misconception. Black hair is also a lot more vulnerable than most hair types. It's really easy to break Black hair. And if it's not easily, or if it's not protected well, it can cause a lot of damage and be really hard to grow back. Black people only wash their hair once a month. We can wash our hair every day if we really wanted to, but oil is our best friend. So we don't need to do that. I probably wash my hair every 2 to 3 weeks, and my hair is moisturized, it's silky, it's a nice texture, and I don't need to wash my hair every day. Africans can only use Black hair products. black hair products are really helpful, but that's not the only products we can use. The whole point is that if we're using a Caucasian hair product, we have to make sure that we have other ingredients or other things that we're putting in to help maintain our oils. For Caucasian people, oils are not your friend. I hear my friends complain all the time about having oily hair. For me, I'm like, I love the oil. That's not that way. So we just have to make sure that if we're using hair products that are coming from, Caucasian hair, that we're using black hair products to help that. And so, yeah, just to keep up with time, these are my suggestions and kind of like takeaway actions now that we're getting through this presentation. Find out where your local black hair salons are. Austin has a very low population of black people, so there aren't very many hair salons here in town. The one that I go to is called Salon Exchange. It's off of Mopac in North Austin. Highly recommend it. It's black owned and really, really good and has great reviews. So it's just something that, like, even as a Caucasian person, you should just know that. Like, where is your local black hair store or black hair salon? Also, black hair stores are cheaper most of the time. So you could go to a Target or a Walmart and find a lot of hair supplies. But if you go to a black hair store, you'll find most of those products and more for way cheaper. So when I go to the hair store, my 3 girl roommates come with me because they know that they're going to get a lot more stuff and more bang for their buck at the black hair store than they will at a Walmart or Target. And sometimes certain stores like that can charge extra for hair supplies, even though you can get them for cheaper at a black hair store. Advocate for black hair supplies in schools and shelters. When I experienced homelessness, I was homeless from age 9 until I was 18. So my entire life, I was unstable, didn't know where my next place was going to be, didn't know where my next meal was going to come from. And a lot of the places that I stayed in did not have supplies that were meant for my hair, which meant that I did not understand how to use that hair care to maintain my roots. And so I just advocate all the time for donation packages, donation drives that help empower Black girls or anyone in social services or helping that community, that marginalized community, have better hair care. And then StyleSeat. StyleSeat is a really great app. It's not just for Black people, it's for all people, but it's a platform where you can go on the app and basically find in your area any hairstylist, any nail salon person, cosmetologist, waxing, all kinds of stuff. And you can go by reviews as well. So it'll show their pictures, their prices, who's been through them, all kinds of different information, so that if you need something tomorrow done for your hair, it's a really great way of making sure that you're going to a verified place that is going to do it well, and you can do it within your power. So I just really want to push forward some takeaway home things for y'all. A little bit over time, but if y'all have any questions, I will stay on a little bit longer, but please feel free to ask any questions. My book is coming out in a couple months about my story from going from surviving to thriving. You can be the first to review my book, but I really appreciate everyone's time here and this learning experience, and just happy Wednesday. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, second that thought.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. I'll be on for an extra couple minutes if anyone wants to ask questions or have any thoughts or any feelings. Yeah. But yeah, have a great day, y'all.
Thank you very much.
Of course.
I guess there aren't any questions. But yeah, thank you, Larry, for providing so much great information and useful information, and just opening up a safe space for us to learn about more about the different hair types and the rich history behind it. But I think we're pretty much everyone's gone at this point. But yeah, I appreciate it a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
maybe we can do like a book signing for your book when it comes out.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely going to do a book launch event for sure in Austin.
Okay, yeah, we'd love to host.
I was gonna ask, could I just get a link for your website again, just so that I can share it with everyone else? Yeah.
Yeah,